joining yet another episode of Next in Queue. My name is Rob Dwyer, and I am your host for the podcast about contact center and customer experience professionals. Joining me today, finally, it's about time, Mark Brody, the CEO of Brohawk Solutions. Welcome, Mark. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great, Rob. It's an honor to be on this podcast. Finally, we connected and schedules aligned, stars aligned. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been too long, and you are my first Jayhawk to join the podcast. So that's exciting. That's very exciting for me.
I think we need some rock chalk chant theme music going on in the background. I'm just saying,
I'll see what I can do in post. so Mark, I typically like to start out with people's past and to set the stage. So you currently live in Round Rock, which is essentially Austin.
Yes.
But you are originally from New Hampshire, nowhere near that. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah, I grew up in at the time I graduated high school, it was voted the #1 place to live in America. Not so small town called Nashua.
Okay.
And some of the accolades that came in prehistoric times when I lived there, is that our high school basketball team was that year voted or ranked #1 in the nation. Our girls basketball team, that is. A lot of accolades coming out of there. And then there's a lot of alumni from my class in particular that have done very, very well, in life as in general. But when I graduated, I actually went to Kansas from New Hampshire. There were two other classmates of mine that we didn't even know we applied, but we wound up there, and it was kind of cool. Being able to be out there with others, and it was in Kansas that I started my career in contact center 31 plus years ago.
Wow. So I got to clarify some things. So you're a multi-generational Jayhawk, right?
Yes.
But growing up in New Hampshire, were you a Red Sox fan? Are you a Patriots fan? What are the alliances going on here?
All of the above. Red Sox, Patriots, Bruins, Celtics. It was funny. I didn't really I wasn't a huge college basketball fan, because remember, I grew up in the 80s. So you had Celtics Lakers rivalry, Celtics Bulls, all that other stuff going on. And Big East basketball was big back then. So my freshman year was 87, 88 at Kansas.
Good time to be a freshman.
It was a great time to be a freshman. That's why my freshman year took a year and a half to get through. So it was good. And for those that don't know, that's 87, 88, Kansas won the national championship for the first time in 33 years or 35 years or something like that. And it was a great time to be a Jayhawk.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, right, you got to see the immediate transition to Roy Williams, and
yes,
that era began. So you mentioned that's where you got your start. So how did you get into contact centers?
So an interesting story. I had applied for 2 jobs in the summer of 1990. One was to mow lawns for the city of Lawrence. As a college student, it was an easy job to get. You work during the day, you have nighttime to play, that type of thing. My other option was I could go work for Sallie Mae, which had a good sized presence there. So I was weighing my options. Do I want to be outside every day in 110-degree heat with absolutely no wind? Because that's the way Lawrence is during the summer.
Yeah.
Or do I want to wear a tie? Because that's what we wore back then, shirt and tie and slacks, and be in an air conditioned environment and potentially look at a business career path. So I chose Sally Mae. It was a tough decision. I mean, it was neck and neck there for a little bit. So, and you know, when I graduated from Kansas, my boss at that time said, "Hey, what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "Well, I was a history major, Rob." So I said, "Well, I'm going to go do great things, maybe be a librarian. I don't know. I mean, I can't remember exactly how I put it. I'm going to do history stuff." And he says, "Well, why don't you apply for this position that we have opening up?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do." And so I ended up applying for it, and got a my first supervisory position. And I cannot. People would laugh at the pay rates that we were getting as supervisors back in the early 90s. But yeah, that's how I got my start in contact center. I've been leading teams or groups, organizations, whatever, since 1993.
Yeah,
So
that's I'm not going to say you're old, but I will say you're a little bit older than me. Not a lot, but a little bit older.
I got some seasoning.
That's exactly it. You've got some season. I'm starting to get some seasoning in my beard these days, so a little bit of salt to go with my pepper.
Hey,
So
there you go.
you were at Sally Mae, and then somehow you made your first foray into the great Lone Star state of Texas. So how did that come about? How did you end up moving from Lawrence to Texas?
Friends are a great thing to have. And I had a buddy of mine that I worked with at Sally Mae who moved down to start his own business down here in the Austin Round Rock area. And he gives me a call one day. He says, "Hey, we're looking for a supervisor," because he had to take another job while he was trying to get his business kick started. And he's like, "Hey, we're looking for another supervisor, manager type. You interested?" I'm like, "I'll give it a shot." So I interviewed and I got the job. And that was my first tour of duty down in Texas. Because fast forward a couple years, and actually fast forward about 11 years later, the same guy called me and said, "Hey, let me tell you, I got a deal for you." And this guy's a New Yorker. So you can imagine how it came across. And he said, I just gave my notice that I'm going to be leaving the company and leaving this new company. And I put your name in for my job." I'm like, "I'm not looking." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you are. You want to come work for this company." And I had known it from my student loan, when I was working in student loans. They had a great reputation. So after about a month or so, I finally decided to apply for the position, and the rest is history. And I've been in Round Rock ever since.
Wow. So I have to ask,
Yeah,
and we're going to get to the name of your company here in a moment,
yeah.
but you're in Texas. You're obviously a proud Jayhawk, and you're in Austin, Texas, not just Texas, but that's the University of Texas territory.
I've been in therapy this whole week, by the way.
I hear you. So for those, this is going to be airing a little after we're recording. We just had a loss to the University of Texas, and
Yeah,
I have to say, like, you're a ranked team playing at home, and I mean it was a pick'em game, and they
exactly.
stormed the court after barely pulling out a win. And that
Uh-huh.
just tells you the state of the fandom at the University of Texas when it comes to basketball.
They were. I think the Longhorn fans were still a little butthurt. Can I say that? I said it
Yeah,
anyway.
you can say it. Yeah.
When it comes to, after football this past year. So it's all good.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, unfortunately, they came out with a win. They really do have
Yeah.
a great basketball team this year.
Yes, they do.
But I wonder, like, how often does that whole thing come up for you being in Austin day to day?
Austin is an amazing area, because it is such a melting pot of people, ideas, backgrounds, that there's about 1,000 alumni, from KU that are part of the Alumni Association network down here. So I get to interact with them. Some of my really good friends are actually, KU alumni as well. And but it's more for discussion purposes.
Yeah.
A lot of banter back and forth and whatnot. So it comes up quite a bit. Oh, you're a Jay. I actually met some guy last night. He went to OU, and he goes, yeah, I went to OU, and he shows me his ring. It was a national championship ring from football. I'm like, dude, yeah. So I looked him up, and he was a top 20 draft pick in the NFL, like, 20 years ago. No, sorry, 40 years ago. So yeah,
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, it's a small world, but I mean, people respect, people respect, folks from Kansas, as far as like Jayhawks. And, they also like giving you a hard time every time you lose.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that I know a lot of people don't follow sports, and I don't have a
Yeah.
problem if you don't follow sports. And I know a lot of people also have some problems with the collegiate model, and I myself have some serious issues
Hmm.
with the way the collegiate model impacts the actual university where you're supposed to go and learn. That
Exactly.
said, I think sports is a great opportunity to begin a conversation with people.
Completely.
And I find so somebody that you and I both know, Milan, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
talk about basketball. He's a big Purdue fan. They're having a great year as well, even though they got smashed last night.
Yes.
But that's a good entry point into getting to know someone on a different type of level, and
Hmm.
it can be a great way to just start a conversation, whether you're the fan of the same teams or you're fans of big rivalries. It can allow you to just get things going.
Rob, you bring up a great point, and like you said, you don't have to necessarily be fans of the same team, because I think anymore, networking is so important, and being able to build those relationships with people, that you can be a little bit more human with.
Yeah,
And that's so important, especially in the contact center world. Um, being able to show that human connection with another person, and so the conversation doesn't always have to be about work. You stay away from conversations that may be a little bit more touchy or dicey, with
sure.
people. And like you said, I love the way you put it. Sports kind of brings people together, regardless if you root for the same team or not. um, it's funny, a funny story about Milan and I, and I tell everybody this. So back in the 2016, I think what it was. No, 2017, Purdue and KU played, in the Sweet 16. Milan and I made a deal, because we were working together at that time, that if Kansas and Purdue ever played together or played against each other, that we would go to the game. So he had a seat right next to me, at in Kansas City, for the shellacking that was Kansas against Purdue, and I never let him forget it. And And then he brings up Glenn Robinson back from like, I don't know, 70 years ago or something like that. And, you know.
Yeah, it seems like and I think this is true for any business, right? It doesn't
Mhm,
matter what business you're in, but contact center business is a people business first, just like
mhm.
almost every business that's out there. And when it's a people business, right, it's about relationships. And
Yeah.
part of the thing that I think people find challenging is, how do I get to know someone? How do I make those connections? And there's something that I feel like has changed a little bit over the last few years as we've migrated to a more work at home environment. And that
Mhm.
I know for me, for those that are watching this, not just listening to this, I meet people on the regular, and the very first thing that we do over like a Zoom or a Teams meeting or something like that, this happened just yesterday, right? I had a
Mhm.
meeting with someone that I didn't know, and immediately we started talking about the Beatles, right? And the pictures behind me, or we'll
Yes.
talk about Star Wars, or those kinds of things that are personal to you as a person that someone else can share. And sports falls into this too, can be a really great jumping off point to having a deeper conversation about some other things, because you've got this kind of shared um, like of something or shared passion of something, and that makes this level of trust just almost immediately. And that's how you start a relationship.
Yes. You know, it's interesting that so many people that I meet on a daily basis, um, yeah, you get the immediate dancing. Oh, what company you work for, and what do you do for a living, and that, and then it evolves into things that, where'd you go to school? Are you a
Yeah.
sports fan? Um, I play a lot of golf. I'm still horrible at it, but I play a lot of golf, and um, it. My golf bag is a Red Sox golf bag, and so inevitably, there's some conversation about sports or something like that, because you're right. There's that mutual passion about a team or a culture or something, that creates that instant bond, and I don't know what it is. The psychological term, but your brain starts saying, okay, this is somebody I want to have a deeper conversation with, and I want to find out more about them, and I'm wondering how I could help them, get further in whatever pursuits that they're involved in. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting to me. Um, we're going to I want to talk a little bit about actually your podcast, because I actually
Yeah.
stumbled upon your podcast before I began this one. And I want to talk about your company, but I also want to talk first about an organization that you've been involved with for quite some time, and that's the Austin Contact Center Alliance. So
Yeah.
tell me about that. What does that organization do, and what's your role in that?
So I've been involved with the Austin Contact Center Alliance for um, over 10 years, probably close to 13 years now. And I've been on the board for ACCA during that entire time as well. My predecessor as president, and that's my current role, as I'm president of the board. Um, I almost want to come in with like a Sinatra thing, saying chairman of the board. No, that's cheesy. I ain't gonna do that. um, I'm a lot more humble than that. I'll put it that way. But I've been involved with ACCA for a number of years. What we do is our goal is to go ahead and educate create networking opportunities, and share best practices with all of our member organizations. Interesting about ACCA, we were founded back in the mid 90s as we were chartered by the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce, the Economic Development Division.
Okay.
And the reason that it was chartered is there were a bunch of business owners here at that time, some of who I have connections with even today, that said, look, we want to be able to share best practices. And they went to the chamber and said, hey, what if we could create a group that could network together, share some best practices, work together in the community. And then if you had somebody that you wanted to go ahead and bring into Austin to go ahead and relocate their business here or grow their business, they would know that there's some resources available for them in order to support their contact center, because contact centers at that time, mid to late 90s, I mean, I think they had a negative connotation to them. They weren't contact centers; they were call centers, and there were telemarketers a lot of telemarketers that would call you, right at dinner time. They knew exactly when you were eating, even if your time varied. They knew exactly when you were eating, and the industry really understood about how professional it needed to become over time. It wasn't just about interrupting your dinner or a lot of outbound calling or anything like that. And so ACCA was founded to go ahead and really support the Austin metro area. And we're still chartered to this day from the chamber as well. And your other question, what do? I lead the organization. We have about 150 or so active member companies,
Okay.
and about between 1,000 and 1,500 individuals who are associated either with the member companies or with them just themselves being involved over the years. And so on a non-COVID period, what we'll do is we'll have in-person events, and we're actually going to start going back in person here, here in a couple months. We'll have in-person events. We'll do lunch and learns. We'll do executive networking sessions. We'll do other things such as SIGs, special interest groups, that will be over like technology. So there'll be like a technology discussion or something that may occur. And the purpose is to really bring people together, share ideas, things like that. In September, October of each year, we have an annual symposium, which the last time we had it, we had about 250 in attendance, which for a regional association is pretty good.
Yeah, it's really good.
I know our friend Mike Pace up in New England. I've been to theirs before, and I know they have about 400 or so at Gillette Stadium. So it's I think the regional associations are really important for people to get involved with. And not just from a networking standpoint, but also from our industry partners. I think it's important that our industry partners recognize that they can reach out and touch somebody in such a non-confrontational, non-salesy manner. It goes back to the relationships that we were just talking about. They can locally build relationships with those people, as opposed to it just being a phone call or an email or a LinkedIn request. They can genuinely build relationships with people.
Yeah, it's a good note to all of the partners out there. If you're looking to drive business with contact centers, get to know the people who work and run these contact centers. It's so much easier than sending that rando LinkedIn message or an email that you bombard and go, "Hey, I noticed you didn't respond to my last email." It's like, yeah, there's a reason I didn't respond to that email.
Exactly. I could tell you're using a program that will select out my title or my role or my region and assume that I'm something in a role or whatever. you don't know me, so I'm just going to ignore you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you, what was it? Is 2018? Is that when you started Brohawk
Yeah.
Solutions?
Yeah. I had wanted to get into consulting for a number of years. And so an opportunity presented itself in 2018. And I was actually having lunch with somebody. And he says, well, why don't you do some referral partnership with me? And I'm like, well, yeah, that sounds great. And he's like, you could build a business like this. And I'm like, oh, really? And he explained it and everything. And I give him a lot of credit for kind of, kicking me in the pants, to say, go out and do this. You can do this. You have the relationships. And so I did. And my focus, Rob, I don't know if this is the right time to talk about that.
Let's go for
But
it.
my focus is really on the small to mid-size, contact centers. And the reason being is, large enterprise organizations, multi-location, types of organizations, they typically have a lot of resources, and they're contracted with some very large consulting organizations, typically. But I see a need where, or in the industry where companies that are smaller in scope, they may have tapped somebody on the shoulder and said, hey, you know what, you're a really good rep. Why don't you be our director of operations for our contact center? And they're like, what do I do? Okay, I'll do it because it's a really cool title, and there's a lot more money at it, but what do I do? And so I like working with those smaller organizations that are very eager to learn all the intricacies of a contact center. But they don't have the money to spend on bringing large consulting groups in, and that's really the niche that I focus on, is those small to mid-sized organizations. I'm going to use a lot of buzzwords here. I like to align people, processes, and technology so that the agent experience is driving a better customer experience, because it all starts, especially in smaller organizations, with the, how efficient and how effective can you make that agent so they're not getting stressed out. And that's important, in order to drive that customer experience, because as a consumer, I mean, I'm sure you've been in this situation as well. You can sense when the person on the other end of the line either doesn't know the answer to the question, or they don't. There's more going on in their life.
Right.
And that sense of frustration, definitely comes through. And if as a leader or as an organization, if I can minimize as much stress as I possibly can, from your plate, you're going to be able to focus more on the person on the other end of the line, or the email, or the chat, or hell, if you're setting carrier pigeons, whatever the
Passenger
case may be.
pigeons.
There you
Passenger
go. There you
pigeons. So one of the things that I think too is critical from contact centers have always been technology forward, but when it was a
go.
call center, right? Probably when you started, and I think about where we were from a computer standpoint. I mean, there was no cloud, right?
Yeah.
You're using the same phone that's probably been there for the last decade and will be
Hmm.
there for the next decade.
Yep.
But we're at a point today where there are so many different solutions, rapidly developing new technologies that are out there. Cloud is a thing, even though not everybody has moved to the cloud
Hmm.
entirely. And as a small business operator, particularly if I'm an insourcer, right? I run my own contact center. I'm probably focused on my business, whatever that business is, and I'm
Hmm.
not out exploring all of these new solutions that are out there, because you just don't have time for that.
Yeah,
So I have to imagine, right, from a small business perspective, it really is a big deal to know someone that you can go talk to who does kind of understand, like, these are the different things that are out there, and know this product. Yeah, I mean, their website looks great, but really, you don't go there.
exactly. Exactly. It's interesting. I've gotten a lot more take up over the past year, um, on a service that I like to offer, and it's more advisory and mentoring. Okay. And that's really focused not on trying to blow your mind with all these reports and assessments and all this other stuff. I mean, I'll come in and do an initial assessment, but it's really focused on the people and how they're using the technology that they have before them. Because you can get a really robust system, a really robust platform, that can julienne fries and all this other stuff, and you know but if it's not the right system for that organization, it's like giving a toddler the keys to a Lamborghini and say, hey, drive me home.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. And the organization is going to fall flat. So I think it's important, that companies realize where they are in like the ecosystem, and don't try and do too much too quickly, because you will fail.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're driving that Lamborghini, but all you're on are city streets that are 30 miles an hour,
Hmm.
um, you're going to overheat and your arm is going to get really tired from shifting back and
Yes.
forth, just
Yes.
between first and second gear. Like, it doesn't make any sense. You should have just got that Honda.
Yeah. In Austin traffic, it's like, all right, maybe I'll just bicycle because I'm going to go faster than the traffic here.
Yeah, that is definitely, so I've been to a lot of places in Texas. I've never been to Austin, but I think it's a town I would really enjoy, but I hear the traffic is horrendous for,
And
something
that's on a
that's in the
good
middle
day.
of the country. Yeah.
Yeah, that's on a good day. It's horrendous. Um, you know, Rob, I'll tell you, when you come out here, we'll go get some barbecue. We'll have a couple
Mm,
adult beverages. And
mm.
if it's during basketball season, we'll catch a KU game.
I I think I need to start making the plans now
There
because,
you go.
having lived in Kansas City, I'm very picky about barbecue, but Texas barbecue is, mm, it's really, really good stuff. There's no
It
doubt.
is. It is. It is. Yeah. So,
So
go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to say, so there's been a lot of growth in Austin over the last few years as well. Like, that's a
Mhm.
really growing area for businesses. Have you been seeing growth in membership to the organization?
Yeah. So just holistically, right before the pandemic, we were seeing about 150 people a day move to the Austin metro area.
Wow.
Um, and it was one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the country. And the So ACCA is one of those things that we're an all volunteer organization. Nobody gets paid for their time or anything like that, and so a lot of our growth has been through word of mouth, us outreaching or reaching out to different companies that are coming to town, or that we hear have just expanded their presence, or things like that. And we really want our members to go ahead and tell us, hey, I heard that XYZ company is putting a 300 seat contact center here in town. And when you start talking to people about the Austin Contact Center Alliance, it's interesting, because their reaction is, oh yeah, I've heard them. I used to be involved with their lunch and learns, or the symposium. And then the other end of the spectrum is, no, tell me more. What is ACCA? And we start talking to them about it. They're like, how do I get involved? And there's a lot of interest in wanting to come out to some of the networking sessions, get involved on different committees. And my predecessor did a great job with keeping us going. And I'm a full believer that you just want to always continue to be taking that to the next level. So over the past couple of years, we have seen a growth in interest. We have seen a lot newer companies, or a lot of companies that are newer to ACCA, that have wanted to become a little bit more involved. And there's we have a couple board members that are involved that weren't working for the companies that they're working for today 3 years ago. So
Yeah.
you know.
So you talked a little bit about kind of what you've seen from your work with
Mhm.
other organizations lately, and how people use technology. I mean, are you also hearing that from the alliance members and just in general within the industry? I mean, I wonder sometimes if, like, we aren't just throwing too much technology at people too quickly without anyone knowing how to use it or what's appropriate for them.
Rob, that's a great point. You alluded to back when I started in contact centers, or call centers at that time. The thought at that time was that IVRs were coming onto the scene and they were going to replace every human that was in a call center. And you wouldn't have to worry about actually staffing. Was going to save people millions of dollars a year. And we see how that worked out. That was a prophecy that didn't turn out. Now, you do have a lot of really great self-service options out there. You have a lot of knowledge management databases, but the call center themselves, it's the agents, or the contact center, the agents are handling, and I know you've seen this as well, handling much more complex situations. And the technology that's out there, that's been out there for a while, has just been the vehicle which to get the right call to the right agent at the right time. And I think what you're starting to see companies ask is, okay, I have the right people in place. I have a good adoption on any self-service options through my IVR. My website is working. But my customer satisfaction on people that are calling into the contact center still isn't where it needs to be. So what's the solution now? And that's when you start looking at products that are out there in the market that whether it's AI based or whether it's some other technology that can really assist that agent in getting to a resolution much more quicker. So I hear a lot of that from a technology standpoint. I hear a lot more of that from ACCA members, but I think the overarching concern, challenge that a lot of contact centers are having is they can't find the right people to put in those seats.
Yeah.
Attrition. And in Austin right now, I mean, we're starting to see average salaries, or average contact center agent salaries, frontline employees, in that $18 to $22
Wow.
range. Whereas right before the pandemic, it was creeping up. It was still $15 to $18 for a really strong agent. But now, I mean, with everything going on in the economy, those wages are really starting to bump up a lot more exponentially. And you're asking these agents to do a lot more and handle a lot more complex situations.
Yeah, it seems the labor challenges are multifold, right? I mean, obviously you've got the economic side of it, which is we're seeing inflation, we're seeing
Mhm.
wage inflation pressures. but we're also asking agents to do more than they've ever done
Yes.
before. And I always tell people, like, in the US in particular, a contact center agent is not looked at as like this glamorous job. It's
Mhm.
really hard. It's a really hard job.
Yep.
And it may not be as physically demanding as a lot of other things that are out there, but you're dealing with complex technology sometimes, business processes, and then the soft skills to deal with customers on the phone and on chat and on email, like all maybe social media, like all of these different channels. And it's complex. It's a really difficult job.
Mental wellness right now, I think in our industry, in the contact center world, it is probably one of the biggest challenges. If you start seeing companies that are starting to come back in to the office, there's a lot of anxiety with frontline agents, with not just frontline agents, with even leadership teams,
Mhm.
about coming back into the office. Just as much as when everybody was forced home, beginning of 2020. Mental wellness is I would say the biggest challenge, um, because as you said, there's a lot more complexity to what we're asking frontline agents and managers and leaders to do, on a day-to-day basis, call to call in some cases. And that it takes a toll, and I think that's driving some of the attrition challenges that companies are having as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And it's going to be very interesting to me to see kind of how things play out long term from
Mhm.
um, all of these different things that are facing the industry. And certainly we know that um, while offshore and nearshore are options, and I think we're seeing more of that, particularly because the cloud technology allows you to move offshore really quickly, whether that's
Mhm.
all of it or a portion of it, whatever. It's really easy to just spin up in a different location these days.
Mhm.
But I do think we're seeing those similar kind of wage pressure issues offshore and nearshore as well. So it makes it really challenging to determine, like, okay, where's the best place for my contact center? Where are the best places for my contact center?
Yes. Yeah, and I think the outsourcing industry has gotten a lot better, um, in ensuring that the folks that are staffed to handle the customer interactions, um, are better suited to the clientele, um, that they're servicing or providing services for. Um, you know, back in the 90s, you could definitely tell if somebody was offshore. Okay, there was definitely accent related issues, that drove some perceptions, right, wrong, or indifferent. It drove some perceptions. I think that today what you're finding is those outsourcers, the BPOs are becoming a lot more astute at that and really focusing their training and development on not necessarily eliminating the accent, but um, more cultural alignment,
Yeah.
than ever before. Um, and Rob, you and I can get into a whole, uh, a whole rabbit hole about about this. Um, but I think that there's certain regions of the world, that being in a contact center role, that's like high society,
Yeah,
you
for
know.
sure.
And the within, and you don't have the pressures of as high a salary as what you do, um you know um in the United States. But it's not just about saving money, it's about making sure that that quality of that contact is there too. And
Yeah.
those that operate outsourcers, overseas, near shore, offshore, I can't wait for the first contact center to be on the moon. That's coming. I'm telling you. You know,
Well, somebody's got to move there first.
exactly. I'm saying it, Space Lab or something. I'm dating myself again. But regardless of where people are at, I think outsourcers are really focused on the quality aspect of what their agents are doing, and it's not just about the button share.
Yeah, for sure. So you talked about mental well-being being a critical piece. Are you seeing um, actual changes from people that you work with, and what are some of the things that they're doing differently to address some of those issues?
I see right now a lot of well, I'll say some companies that are out there, because I don't want to paint too broad a brush on what I'm seeing and hearing. The companies are really focused on making sure that the agent is feeling supported. And I wouldn't necessarily say, there's larger organizations that are able to overstaff a little bit easier to allow for more PTO or mental health days, things like that. I think a lot of the HR packages that are out there for employees really focus um, on that mental wellness, mental well-being aspect of it. So whether it's time off, whether it's ERP, or not ERP, employee assistance, EAS, or
Mhm.
EAC, whatever it is. My alphabet isn't working today, so
We got jargon flying everywhere.
in the contact center, that's all we are. We're a bunch of jargon. So I see that there's a lot more focus on what benefits and what's going to differentiate us versus someone else. Even from a mental wellness standpoint, though, even those companies that said, no, we're coming back in person, they're realizing we're going to have an attrition issue if we don't at least have some sort of hybrid model available, because right now you don't know if your child's school is going to close,
Yeah.
or their classroom is going to close, and so they have to. You never want a good employee to have to choose between family and work. They can do both, and I have a 3.5-year-old, and she knows, hey, if dad's working, I get to watch my iPad for an hour, or I get to do something else, and that's okay. And I think that the companies that are focused on becoming a little bit more employee friendly, and most, I think, are going to be the ones that they're going to have the best retention rates in the future.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old saying about the stock market, which is the market hates uncertainty. And I feel like
Yep.
for employees, and really all employees, not just agents, right? But we're in an era where there's just uncertainty everywhere. Like there's
Hmm.
uncertainty about what's around the corner tomorrow. And to your point, talking about, hey, are we going to bring people back on site? How are we going to manage that when things are still so very much in flux?
Hmm.
There's that uncertainty that makes people anxious, and it does, like every level, right? So whether
Yes.
you're running the company or you're a frontline agent who's just trying to worry about, can I make my shift today? There's a lot of uncertainty that creates challenges for people.
Yep. And with this really being an employee market, Rob, um, if I don't like something that my boss is saying to me today, I know by tomorrow or the day after, I can probably be sitting in another chair, working for someone else, and then all I have to do is shut off my VPN, and I can go work for somebody else that quickly.
Yeah.
And that's where technology has become has really caught up with the needs of businesses. The ability to onboard somebody is, a lot quicker, without them having to be sitting physically in your office and arranging for all of that security and everything. I mean, it's
Yeah.
technology at the speed of thought.
Yeah, it really is. It makes me wonder, and I still don't know where we are with this, right? And I don't think there's one answer for for all companies, right? I think every company is going to have their own answer.
Mhm.
But I wonder if uh, working from home, while that alleviates a lot of things, it really, if you're a business owner, there are a lot of huge benefits to
Mhm.
consider when you talk about working from home for contact center specifically.
Yes.
Um, but I wonder how much of that agent well-being piece that we're still trying to figure out, because while work at home has been a thing that has been around for a long time in the contact center
Mhm.
business, I don't know that, because there hasn't been a huge broad adoption until the last 2 years, that we've entirely figured out, like, how do we create kind of that atmosphere that we had in the contact center, in the brick and mortar environment? How do we
Mhm.
create that when our people are at home?
You hit the nail right on the head. That's the $1 million question right there. Um, and it you you can't make it. My simple answer is, don't try and become institutional virtually. You know, um, don't have so many checks and balances that are in place that that make it cumbersome for your frontline leaders to interact with your frontline agents. You still have to have some things in place, from a security standpoint, but you know, don't over regulate, if it's not something that's needed, and give your agents, give your teams the opportunity to show their personality. Um, you know, and it just goes back to what I just said. Don't over institutionalize it, because it'll drive people nuts. Um, it's the same reason why a lot of companies don't use scripts anymore.
Yeah.
You know, because they found that when people were able to bring their personalities out in a conversation, that it created a better agent experience, and it also became a better customer experience, because that customer on the other side is then able to see the human side of the company that agent is representing. Quick
Yeah.
story here.
Oh, I'm
So
excited now.
back in the 90s, there was a lot of people, if they wanted to go ahead and activate their credit card, or activate a card of some sort, they needed to call in and actually speak to somebody. And then there was usually the upsell of doing this, that, or the other thing, credit insurance or whatever the case may be. So I was working for a company, and we were a BPO, and we were doing credit card activations for Visa accounts. Um, and I had a rep, great personality, but the caller, said to the rep, and the caller was, just by tone of voice and her vocal mannerisms, was probably a little older. And she's like, Visa, where can I use, where do I use this? Where do I use this card? And the rep, without skipping a beat, said, well, Visa, it's anywhere you want to be. Um, I had to terminate that person because they went off script. I had to terminate that person because they went off script, and it wasn't aligned with what that issuer felt was appropriate, because they were so institutionalized, for a lot of reasons. I mean, but I mean, they were so sanitized in how they approach those customer interactions, that there was not a variance for not going verbatim,
Wow.
you know. And today you wouldn't see that. One, because
No.
most credit card activations are done, either through your smartphone, cloud, or an online system, or something like that. Um, but people are given the freedom to really show their personalities, as long as they're not being offensive or anything like that. And with AI technologies that are out there, you'll know very quickly if somebody's going sideways on a call.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know,
I think that's incredibly enlightening. I mean, there are certain things that probably still need to be scripted because they have
mhm,
legal ramifications and those
of
things. But
course.
you're so spot on, and just that personality, as long as they've got, good guardrails to bump up against. It's like when you go to the bowling alley with your kids and you get the bumpers in the
I know my kids don't need them anymore. I do, though.
it's like, I just don't want you to throw a gutter ball, but aside from that, right, just somewhere in the lane, we're
Yes.
good. All I'm trying to do is get you to hit the pins down, and that pin, right, that's all about the customer experience, right? I'm
Yeah.
trying to focus on a good customer experience, and I think that's a good lesson when you're evaluating calls, because I think
Mhm.
a lot of people get hung up on the, like, did they do this? Yes or no? Did they do this? Yes or no? Did they do this? Yes or no? And those things are there for a reason, but ultimately, right, what was the customer experience? Let's start there. Is this
Exactly.
customer happy? Are they upset?
Yes.
Are they going to call back because we gave them the wrong information and then they're going to be really upset? Because, you
Mhm.
could have an interaction where a customer, yeah, they sound happy and they're like, oh, Mark, thank you so much. You're really helpful today. And I'm thinking, but Mark, they're going to call back tomorrow because everything you said was wrong.
Yes. It's interesting. I hear more and more people talking about call listening, um, as coming from the lens of the customer, you know,
Yeah.
and that's really flipped quality assurance completely on its head. And what is the propensity? I wish somebody would create this score if it's not already out there, but a propensity for a callback score, or a rating, or something like that. Um, and evaluating a call interaction, was there resolution, like what you were talking about? Was there resolution? Is this person going to call back? Are they going to be really upset when they call back? you know
maybe we just came up with a new Maybe we just came up with something new. Instead of willingness to recommend, it's likelihood to have to call back. Maybe we need
there
to
you
come up with
go.
that score.
There you go. We'll call it an R factor, the resolution factor.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Well, hey, if people want to get in touch with you, whether they're in the Austin area or not, what's the
Mhm.
best way for them to get in touch with you?
Rob, people can reach out to me, through my website. It's www.brohawksolutions.com. Email me directly at mark@brohawksolutions.com. Um, you know, um, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to. I love growing my connections and my network. And don't be surprised if, after you send me a connection request, that I don't try and engage you in a conversation at some point in time. Those are the best ways to do that. I mean, if you have carrier pigeons, I guess I can give you my address. That's all good. Um,
I personally am not using the pigeons anymore.
no.
I got sick of cleaning up the floor, and so it was a
Yes.
thing, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I had to.
They've been retired, and
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I
They're
get it.
in they're in Pigeon, Florida now. So
Eating breadcrumbs.
yeah.
Hey,
Mark, it's been a pleasure having you on Next in Queue. I really appreciate the time today. And I know we'll be talking again. I got to get a trip to Austin booked relatively soon.
I would love to host you here, and love to actually have an adult beverage with you in person. And Rob, thank you very much for inviting me on your podcast. This has been great. It's been fun, and we will hopefully be talking again here soon.